What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you, Jimmy Smith, Ryan Moody, our MMA show, here to talk about UFC on ESPN Plus. Anthony Smith, Glover Teixeira. We're going to start this card, and you better be there on time, because I think this is going to be the fight of the night. Carl Robertson, Melvin Vettori. Vettori has 2 wins over some gatekeepers in Fiera and Sanchez. I think the split over Izzy says a lot about the credentials he has. He does a really good job at kind of moving in and out of range, right, straight, left hook. It does a good job at limiting the opportunities he can be hurt while maximizing the damage he can cause. Robertson, obviously a great kickboxer, and I think that he will need that to slow down the movement that Vettori has, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. Can Robertson slow the movement of Vettori? I actually think he's going to get it done. I'm going to pick him to win, but I think this one will go all the way. And for the record, before you speak, Jimmy Smith, I proved to you I did not watch your breakdown. I have no idea how you feel about these fights. So this is a true test of our similar mindsake, to go with our similar voices, to go with someone actually said the other day, you look like Dana White in that breakdown you did where you were asking if they would stop a fighter from exposing that he had COVID-19. I thought it was comical that you really check all the boxes for being multiple people.
Yeah. You seen have you seen American Psycho?
Yeah. What type of question is that?
Yeah, that's true. Well, when he's mistaken for everybody, that's me in MMA. Like, that's me, 100%. I've been mistaken for everyone in MMA at some point. Anyway, so Marvin Vettori, the key to this one to me is volume. The guy just throws a lot. He throws a lot of punches. As you said, he moves in and out well. It's constant motion, it's constant movement, but it's constant pressure and it's constant throwing. He's just one of those guys, not a great finisher, doesn't throw with a lot of pop, but death of 1,000 cuts. He just throws a lot of little punches. Carl Robertson, an excellent kickboxer, like you said, but he tends to take a little bit more time setting up his power shots. He tends to want to counter a bit more. He doesn't always lead the dance, and I think Vettori is going to lead this dance and throw a lot, and Robertson is going to have to catch up late or finish him late, because it's hard to beat a guy who throws the kind of volume Vettori throws. I think it's going to be close, but I'm going with Vettori by decision. I think he just outworks Robertson. I think that's how it goes.
We move up. Ricky Simone, Ray Borg. I think Borg is going to have a similar weight issue, as we've talked about in the past. Obviously, just about everyone has fights. It seems like we deal with it. However, with the step up, I think we still might see a little bit of a problem here and a challenge with this cut. He does mix his strikes in well, solid takedowns. When he commits to a takedown, they're solid. Dominant ground game when he gets somebody on the ground. I think Ricky was on quite a run until that Faber loss. That go back and listen to the podcast. Neither you or I saw coming. And that step back has seemed to kind of hurt his morale a little bit. But great flying knees, combos, really good pressure, very, very aggressive in his striking. I think a guy that knows, what he's doing in terms of fighting a guy like Ray Borg. And, this could be a big name for him. I think the game plans in terms of how they generally fight don't mix well here. And I think it's going to be Ricky Simone getting back on track with a win.
Yeah, the problem is that, and I like Ray Borg as a person and all he's been through, and as a father, and I like his style and everything. He wasn't a finisher at 125. This is a guy, hasn't had a finish in 5 years, and that's normal at 125. In a division where guys don't get a lot of finishes because they're quick, they don't have a ton of power. He's on the low scale of finishes there, let alone come up to 135. Ricky Simone, obviously the step back to Uriah Faber, that hurt him a lot, but a big 135er. He's strong. He's a wide dude. And so it's the idea that Borg has to outland him for 15 minutes, outwork him for 15 minutes, add a new weight class. I think it's just asking too much from him. And it could be one of those things where, because he lost back-to-back fights, after I think it was an 8-fight win streak for Ricky Simone, but Uriah Faber, I think he underestimated Uriah Faber, went in guns blazing, and it caught him. Rob Font, an excellent fighter. He lost a decision there. That's taken a lot of his momentum away. People have kind of overlooked him. People have kind of forgotten him. And I think that's unfair. I think if this one he gets back on track, I think it's a matter of Ray Borg just biting off a little bit more than he can chew with his bantamweight debut.
Moving up the card, we get Drew Dober, Alexander Hernandez. Drew Dober, I think, is coming in with hype because, he's won 5 of his last 6, but under the radar hype. This guy, to me, though, always looks in shape, always looks prepared, very confident, solid wrestler, prefers to stand up, really has good boxing. I think his movement has improved a lot, sets up his shots as well by mixing and kicks really good left hook. I think Hernandez, almost going back to what you talked about with Vettori at the beginning of this, is a volume guy. Big on the combos, leg kicks, body kicks. Maybe doesn't have the power, but certainly has the speed. I think this is going to be one of those kind of classic striking matchups of, can Hernandez stay outside and land that volume? But I'm a pretty big believer in Drew Dober. I believe he is going to be able to inflict the damage to make this a competitive fight, but find his way inside enough to win. I actually would say this would be a second-round stoppage for Drew Dober.
I think this is a very close fight. I really went back and forth a lot on this one. The funny thing to me is they're both kind of in that. Now, although Drew Dober a little bit older at 31, Hernandez 27, right in his physical prime, in that young gun phase, and they have yet to really break out of it. I remember when Hernandez beat Beneil Dariush, blew him out of the water, and then beat Alban Mercier, who was another up and comer. A lot of people were looking at, beat him with a unanimous decision, and then ran right into Cowboy Cerrone, and it just knocked him right off that pedestal, much like the Ricky Simone fight we were just talking about with Uriah Faber. He had all the juice, all the momentum, brash, cocky, trash-talking Cowboy Cerrone, and then got blasted. And that really set him back. Now, the win over Trinaldo, who is one of the most solid guys at 155, just strong, just big, strong, hard-hitting moments, tough guy to finish. And he stayed composed and won a unanimous decision. Drew Dober, I want to say similar in that his longest streak is 3 wins in a row at the elite level, right? But the guys who beat him, Efren Escudero, he lost to Alban Mercier, lost to Beneil Dariush. Now, I don't believe in the MMA math. Hernandez beat both Alban Mercier and Dariush, therefore he's better. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. But the names who have beaten him, Nick Hines, Sean Spencer, these aren't great fighters. And I just believe the ceiling on Alexander Hernandez is a little bit higher. Is he elite? No, not yet. Drew Dober, can he beat Alexander Hernandez? He certainly can. I just say, if you said who's going to get further in this sport, who can maybe be a contender, I would pick Hernandez before I'd pick Dober, but very, very close fight. I'm just barely going with Hernandez.
Then I really now more interested than ever to hear how you feel about OSP and Ben Rothwell, because to me, this was a fight between two guys who have been perennially disappointments. It put together a big win, no bigger than we saw OSP and John Jones, where you thought to yourself, hey, maybe OSP is something special here, and then it's, strings together some losses and some really questionable performances. Ben Rothwell very much the same way. So I think it's almost like who gets the bronzest star in this. With OSP, listen, good submissions, guys, Von Flue choking it up. Boxing, striking, mixes in shots well, fights really effectively behind his left straight. I think with the step up here, you may notice a speed advantage that we haven't seen in other weight classes, especially against a guy like Ben Rothwell. Ben's kind of a different guy. He kind of fights through a lot and is one of those guys when you have Ben hurt, he seems to be more dangerous. Like once he starts to bleed, like he starts to just get more powerful. There's not a whole lot of people that you can generally look and say, yeah, almost like Tony Ferguson. Once you get him hurt, you kind of back him in a corner. Then you can expect, some fireworks. So guy comes out, big power, uppercuts, left hooks, applies pressure well when he wants to, which, like we talked about, generally when he gets hurt. But this is a tough fight to call just because we've seen so much inconsistency. So I'm going to go with Ben Rothwell simply because I'm more comfortable with him at this weight. And I actually think he's going to surprise a lot of people and get a knockout here and then put in some shitty performances.
Yeah, I happen to agree. The thing about OSP is I haven't seen that next level thing. We talk about his inconsistency. You're 100% correct. That makes me think he's going to jump up to heavyweight and be anything special. Now, it doesn't take, unfortunately, right now, a special heavyweight to beat Ben Rothwell, but I don't see OSP as that guy. And also his submission game, it's a top-heavy game. He loves that Von Flue choke, good top pressure. Yeah, that works okay at light heavyweight. Ben Rothwell's a big heavyweight. Big Ben Rothwell. He cuts down to make 265. The step up in weight class, I think is going to be a little too much for him. The people that think OSP is going to win talk about his footwork and his combinations can be a bit more athletic. I think that works for about a round. And as soon as Ben Rothwell gets hit a little bit and starts making it bloody and war, he starts walking through shots and walking OSP down. That's how I see this fight going. But his submission game has been his ace in the hole. I don't see him having that against Ben Rothwell. Now, another thing to keep in mind is Rothwell has had those moments of excellence at heavyweight. This is a guy who knocked out Alistair Overeem. This guy who choked out Josh Barnett. The odds on that were like negative 1,000. It was crazy that he would submit Josh Barnett. And then he lost 3 in a row to tough opposition. Over the hill, Andrei Arlovsky shouldn't have been in there, but Goyovanov, Junior Dos Santos, both very, very tough, all those by decision. And that kind of stalled his momentum. But I think he can do more, and I think we see a good performance out of him. OSP, much like the Ray Borg fight, this is a little bit too much of a step up if he's going to go to heavyweight.
Should have planned the celebration better. I was at that fight in Newark when he choked out Ben Rothwell, choked out. Why is my brain just not functioning?
Josh
sometimes?
Barnett.
Yeah, Josh Barnett. Nobody saw that coming. I mean, I still am amazed that happened. That was quite a card. Anthony Johnson on the headliner too, and Anthony Johnson talking about coming back. So I guess we might have to talk about that in the not too distant future. Moving forward, Anthony Smith, Glover Teixeira. Glover's on a 3-fight win streak. That's guys that are tough outs. Okay. Great boxing, really good defense. Just because you kind of mentioned it, tends to walk guys down a little bit. Likes to connect off hooks and angles. Does a great job with submissions, top or bottom. But even though I've had a past with Anthony Smith, a few fighters I know better than Anthony. One thing that has tend to kind of bother me a little bit is this legend killer moniker. The reality is the lines to fight guys like Gus and Rashad, Glover, Shogun, those are short lines, right? Same as Volkan Ozdemir. So you got a guy that's a solid striker, really good with his switching stances, volume, power, underrated clinch, really underrated on the ground until he choked out, Volkan Ozdemir over there with Scott Morton. So I think, to me, they overhype the legend killer in the name of he just gets guys that nobody else is really in a position to fight from a division standpoint, a matchup standpoint, and probably people don't want to fight because, Glover Teixeira is a legit killer and has been for a long time. However, I think Anthony's speed, angles, it's just going to be too much, and it's going to be a round 1 stoppage, just like we kind of saw over when he fought before. And I think that's probably the one thing to take away from this is hopefully, when he gets these wins like he has, over Shogun, just put more respect on what he's done rather than putting down, oh, look at how old Rashad Evans is. Oh, look at how old Hector Lombard is. Like, that's not always the case with these fighters.
Yeah. I think Anthony's just, as you said, too sharp physically, too good of an athlete, too quick. Glover Teixeira in the Roberson fight, Kutalabra, Krylov, kind of plotting, walking guys down, still tough, still powerful, but everything seems labored. If he gets on top of you in good position, he can still choke you out. If he hits you with that left hand, he can still finish you, right? He has those old man weapons, right? Good pressure, real pop in his punch, but the speed, the setups, the footwork, the angles, the defense isn't there anymore. Anthony Smith is just a younger, hungrier, sharper. He's physically in his prime. I just don't. This is one of those cases where the young eat the old in MMA. It's just how it goes. And so to me, it's a matter of Anthony Smith being a better, younger, sharper version of Glover Teixeira. Period. And so, I mean, can he land that big shot? Of course. But Anthony Smith, throughout his entire training camp, what's he working on? Avoid the big left hook, avoid the big right hand. Don't let this guy on top of you. Those are the 3 things he's got to worry about. Glover Teixeira can still hit hard. And if you give him good position, he can put it on you. Anthony Smith has the training to avoid that. He has the physicality to avoid that. He has the footwork to avoid that. I think Anthony Smith gets another win, stays in that title conversation. I would say it's a second rounder because Glover's, still an old warrior. He can take a beating. I think he gets past the first round, but not a lot past that. I would say round 2.
As I was going back and watching fights for this, I was looking at, the John Jones fight, the Phil Davis fight, the Anthony Johnson fight, even the more recent Gus fight. And it's so funny that when you put it that way, it kind of puts it into that same perspective of, here's a guy that's going to beat 90% of the division. But
yes,
it's just that top 10%. He definitely had it at one point, right? He just doesn't have it now. He's going to beat, Krylov, Kutalaba, Robertson, as you said. He's going to struggle with, Anthony Smith, Anthony Johnson, Gus, Corey Anderson. It's just
Thiago
going to be the way it
Santos.
is. Yeah, absolutely. And how do they beat him? We go back and look at Gus. Go back and look at Anthony. They beat him with pressure. They beat him with punches. They beat him with volume. Phil Davis. These are guys that could have fallen, and really helped improve his stock and have him remain there. It's ironic there's an OSP fight in there too, where OSP kind of failed to underdeliver, but whatever, just saying. So, to me, I think you have to look at a lot of what people have done. They don't label, nobody's coming in and saying, well, Glover Teixeira is the legend that gets killed all the time, right? No, they put him in with the same credentials, being top in the world. It just seems like more often than not, we build that narrative of, oh, here's the young guy versus the legend killer. We're going to feed, no pun intended, we're going to feed this guy to the lions, but it doesn't ever get put the other way. Like no one's buying this, hoping Glover gets ruined. They know the guy has power and can knock, he can knock Anthony out. He certainly could. He has the tools and the power to do it. It's just, I think Anthony's defenses are too much.
Look, the deal here is if there were a Masters 205, he'd probably be champion. Straight up. You know what I mean? For guys over 37, Glover's probably number one. You know what I mean? It's like, if you've been in jiu-jitsu as long as I have, you see great, Shaolin Ribeiro, right? He's one of the greatest jiu-jitsu artists of all time, 3-time world champion. I think he took Masters Worlds last year, right? Which is like, or Masters 2, whatever it was, over 35. Yeah, great. But he can't beat the young guns anymore. It's just how it is. He doesn't get blown away. He wouldn't get just smoked ridiculously. He's just a little too old to beat the best of the best in their physical prime right now. Happens in every sport. Can he still compete? Sure. Once again, Masters world champion. But it's the idea that there's no Masters League in MMA. Glover Teixeira would be number one over 35 at 205, but doesn't happen anymore, man. Doesn't work that way. He doesn't have the pop he used to. And Anthony Smith is right there in his prime waiting for guys like this.
Dan Kelly was like, where is that Masters League? Where is that? When's that starting? I agree with you. And it's an interesting debate. I mean, I know a lot of people say, would you want to see, age specific divisions where you do have more competitive balance between, the younger athletes to the older athletes? We don't always see it in sport, especially in a combat sport. Do you feel like at some point Bellator, just to throw a name out there, do you feel like at some point Bellator is going to fire that up when they finally say, hey, listen, we can probably cash in on these larger UFC names that are going to look to move forward, but the UFC has really shown no qualms. They will let older fighters walk if it comes down to, I guess, for lack of a better term, putting asses in seats. When they don't put asses in seats anymore, they show them the door.
I don't want that at all. And I'll tell you why. If you
oh no, hold on. Let me tell you why. Because you're bitter, you're a hater, you hate Dana White, right? Like that's why.
Well, no, it's the other. I was going to talk about something else, but yeah, sure. Oh yeah, but that's
what the
comment
section
everything
thinks.
Well, of course, yeah. I'm a hater. Everything I say, right? I'm just bitter and angry. Look, the deal is, and I heard this from somebody I won't name who's high up in the UFC, and about BJ Penn coming back. And them getting criticized for him fighting Yair Rodriguez, remember? And Yair just demolished him. And the guy said, if we didn't give him a tough fight, if we gave him somebody he can beat, he'll want another one. Right? It's almost like, oh, why'd you do that to BJ? It's like, if he can't handle those guys, we don't want him stumbling through these bums and thinking, I'm still good. I want another fight. If you can't compete, get out. If you're sitting here going, I want another old guy, no, then do something else. There shouldn't be room for you, right? There shouldn't be an old timers league where you can take another beating from another old guy, right? That shouldn't, if you can't compete with the young bucks, time to retire. I don't think there should be a division made for that, right? In jiu-jitsu, nobody's getting punched in the face. That's why they have masters divisions, and old guys can grapple against each other because they're not trying to break each other's faces. So to me, it's one of those things where if you need that cushion, if you need that help, if you need that security blanket, if I'm fighting another guy who's 40, get out. Get out. So I completely agree with the UFC stance on that, or I completely disagree with the promotion to go, hey, we're having like an old timers league. Like, no, so they can take one more beating. I don't agree with that at all.
I think some of it is being selfish as a fan and wanting to see the hope of that moment, the glimmer of that athlete's greatness one final time. And unfortunately, almost across the board, universally in sport, we get reminded that the person that we have in our memory is not the person that we currently see. And a great parlay into this would be, Mike Tyson talking about coming back. A lot of people really excited about that. Me, as a fan, I love it. I have no problem paying to see Mike Tyson fight, even if I know it's one final time. Even after the last time I paid to see him fight, I was pretty bitter because, he didn't want to be there and he was just making a check and it was just shell himself. But that's all in the past, Jimmy. I'm ready to move forward now because I've seen some clips on Instagram and Twitter and I feel comfortable in my purchase again. But, so often do we buy memories that don't often fulfill themselves. And I think that's unique to this sport. In no other sport but combat sports do people buy memories. You don't go and see somebody go to a NASCAR race or go in a tennis match and assume that the past greatness will still be great simply because you have those good memories. Yet in combat, we buy into it all the time. I want to see so-and-so one final time.
It's insane that, in the Mike Tyson case, 3 seconds of him hitting pads on Instagram and everybody forgets Kevin McBride and Danny Williams, right? They forget Lennox. They forget all the times we went, oh my God, he shouldn't be in there. Oh, he's hitting pads. We can't wait to see him. And you're like, do you guys, I know a lot of people are young and they don't remember it. I saw those fights. I also saw a prime Mike Tyson when I was a kid, right? I saw him devastate Michael Spinks, right? I saw him knock out Trevor Berbick. That guy's gone. It's been gone for a long time. And I've mentioned this before, but one of the things I always point to when I think about this is somebody on Twitter, I believe, was talking about how the Ken Shamrock Kimbo Slice fight was a work, it was a fix. And they said, this is a guy who submitted Bas Rutten. Let that sink in. And I tweeted out, yeah, he submitted Bas Rutten when I was a junior in high school. But people have this picture in their head of Ken Shamrock. When else would you go, oh, he's great. Look what he did 20 years ago. That guy's gone. He's not there anymore, you idiot. That's like, putting Mike Tyson in right now against Tyson Fury and then going, oh, he looked bad. Yeah. Oh, this is a guy who knocked out Trevor Berbick. Sure, before you were born, dude. We expect them to be forever young, and it doesn't work that way. But people have a picture in their head of this athlete, and they want to see that person again, but that person's gone. Gone. Might as well be dead. That person you're thinking of, that Mike Tyson, baddest man on the planet, is gone. He's dead. That picture of Ken Shamrock doing pancreas who looked like a He-Man doll, that guy's gone. He's never coming back. And so it's one of the most disturbing things about combat sports is the short memory and the desire to get one last great fight, and it almost never works. It almost never happens. And somebody out there will talk about George Foreman. George Foreman took 10 years off boxing. From 1977 to 1987, he didn't fight. That's 10 years of not getting punched in the face and not sparring and not wearing his body down. So he was able to make a late run, but he took 10 years off. People look at Randy Couture. Randy Couture didn't start fighting until he was 33. So, it's just one of those things where you never get the B-Hop. But B-Hop didn't have the slide of a Mike Tyson where he suddenly went off a cliff and then came back. So it's one of the most disturbing things because in the end of the day, it hurts these people. It hurts these fighters. And we as fans are always I got so tired of that pattern of old person fighting. Fans get excited. It ends up being a dud and fans are disappointed. I'm like, you guys get excited every single time and you get disappointed every single time. And I just never understood it.
Did Penny agree? Someone agree.
Penny disagree with me.
Here's what I would offer to you. With all due respect, you've called a lot of fights. You've been to a lot of events. You've seen a lot of fighters. Okay? Not every fan has that. So when we go back, in time, and you're calling the Bellator NYC card, and you don't know that I exist in the world, and I'm going to that Bellator NYC card, not knowing that in 3 years we're gonna have this podcast. I went there because I said to myself, hey, I want to see that I want to say that I saw Chael Sonnen fight. I want to say that I saw Wanderlei Silva fight. These are guys that I respect, I admire, I look up to. Now, I don't have to quantify to someone that, hey, I saw Chael fight at Bellator NYC well past his prime. Okay, all I have to say to myself is, yes, I physically was in a building and I watched one of my favorite fighters fight. And that's all that matters to me. Now, is that shallow? Is that, me putting his health above my desire to see him compete? Absolutely. I'll be the first one to tell you. I went into that, for lack of a better term, I went into that shit show knowing it was a shit show, paying good money and helping justify it because, well, I'll get to see Neiman Gracie on there. I'll get to see, Brett Primus on there. I'll get to see Aaron Pico get smoked by Zach Freeman. It'll be the best memory I have of that whole event. But that's why. That's why. Just like and to put, the quintessential name on this for the moment, if Rampage Jackson announced that he was fighting in 2 weeks at the 7-Eleven down the street, Jimmy, guess who's going to the 7-Eleven down the street in 2 weeks just to say that I saw him fight? I don't care how much it is. I don't care if I have to buy 6,000 days of Slurpees to watch the fight. I will do it and probably dump them out after I purchase them because they're not good for you. But at the same time, that's what I'm buying. That's what I'm going there for. That's why I want to see it. Because, I didn't get to see all the things that you saw. I didn't get to make that connection and make those memories, which, to you is a totally different situation. But I think sometimes in the media, people disconnect that. Like a lot of us just want to see it one more time to say that we saw it, and we're willing to be selfish enough to say, well, I just want to see it. And you know what? If it takes 3 years off somebody's life, well, then I guess that's what they decided to do. Right. So all that matters to me is that I saw so-and-so fight. I mean, it's a cold-hearted way to look at things, but it's a cold-hearted sport, too. At the end of the day, these people do go in there to beat each other up. They don't go in there to kill each other. They don't go in there to murder each other like I read in the comment section of the day. It's not, predetermined murder between individuals, but they go in there to compete. And if they still feel like they can do it, and I have an opportunity to watch people that I want to see fight that I never got an opportunity to do it, then, unfortunately, I'm one of those guys that will make that commitment.
A lot of people will, but on the other side of it, how I see it, I just explained it. I dealt with a ton of pissed off fans screaming fix, screaming all kinds of stupid things at me when it's just a matter of age. Rampage, Fedor, oh, that was a fix. No, Rampage doesn't want to get hit in the head anymore. He took one and went, F this, and he's done. This is not the guy who knocked out Chuck Liddell, okay? Not there anymore. So, yeah, I see it as a kind of a sad display, but you also wouldn't tweet at me or bitch and yell and scream and boo and all the stuff that I had to sit there and listen to from fans that expected. If fans are just there like, hey, I just want to see Wanderlei Silva one more time, fine. I just want to see Rampage one more time. As soon as he went down, they're booing and, oh, boo, he sucks. Okay, well, you set yourself up for that, dude. What did you expect to see? That's the other side of it. Is I had to deal with all this disappointment all the time from people who didn't just go there. I just went there to see him. Man, I know he got beat, whatever. Or yeah, he looked terrible, but I just want to see him. I had to deal with like this flood of resentment and disappointment, and I once again, it's you can't do both. If you're there just to see your favorite fighter fight, I don't want to hear how bad they look. I don't want to hear how disappointed you are and this and that. You have no right to expect anything more than their warm body getting into a cage and the door closing and it hits, and it starts. That's all you have the right to see. Because the prime you want to see, they already gave you that. They are bankrupt. They have no more to give. So you want to see Wanderlei Silva stand there and do the wrist thing and all that stuff? Great. And then Chael beat the piss out of him. So it's just, I've had to deal with both sides of it so many times that it's disappointing. And it's like, dude, just let these people retire and get out and take your dreams and take your hopes and give them to a different fighter. Give them to that next generation. You're never going to see Tyson Burbick. You weren't there. You weren't old enough. Sorry, you missed out on that era. Okay? My dad saw Sugar Ray Robinson. Okay, I didn't. And so it's just, I just missed out. I got to watch it on YouTube. Sorry. I'm not going to sit here and go, I want a Sugar Ray Robinson back if he weren't dead. But you get what I'm saying. Like, you can't have Sugar Ray Leonard anymore. Sorry, he's gone. Commentator now. Watch it on YouTube. That's how I feel about it.
You know, I got to see Fedor fight live. You know that?
Yeah, I was. Were you there?
It was the same card. I was checking all types of boxes. I got Fedor, Chael. I mean, I don't have to. It doesn't matter to me that they were on the same card. I was just checking boxes, Jimmy. I was like, this is great. I'm going to go see 3 legends. I don't care what happens. And, you know, just be happy. And I was happy.
You didn't tweet me angrily afterwards, so great.
I didn't. And I didn't say fixed fight, but I do know that I distinctly remember that I had to pay like $100 to park my car that night and walk back like 2 miles because I didn't want to pay for a cab. But I was happy about it. And I had my poster with me. So, you know, always have that memory of all those great nights. And then obviously I didn't realize that way down in the front, you were being unceremoniously heckled by someone that probably thought you were Joe Rogan and sounded exactly like somebody that was sitting in the 200 section. And neither of us knew that our lives would connect so sharply just years later. So with a tear in my eye and knowing that we're not going to be without each other for probably more than 48 hours because we will be back to break down more commentary. We appreciate you guys watching this, and we will be back very soon with more commentary.